What's going on, y'all? This is Sam Thory. We're coming back to Payload today for our learning management system that we're building out. This is our phase 2. In our first video, we built out some cornerstone collections for our learning management system. We have our tenants, and we have users, and we have our media, and as well as student settings. So we have some big collections there where we have a lot to go. If you missed out, or if you're following along, if you go to my GitHub, and I'll post the link, there's a branch called Phase 1 where you'll find all of the code for the first video. And there were some changes that I made after the fact just to make sure that everything is working as expected and up to date with Payload 3. We just go back over to UML diagram that we built out. Alright, so we have our UML diagram that we built out from the start with Cursor and with ChatGPT, using the context of our project to try to build this out. So far we have tenants, and let's see, we have media, and if we scroll over here we should have users, and that's about it for now. We have student settings here somewhere, right here. So some of the big ones that we're going to do today are building out our courses, basically. So we have 3 levels for our courses. We have courses, and then we have modules, which the courses are made up of several or multiple modules. And then we have lessons within modules. And in the lessons, we could have quizzes, and I think assignments are tied overall to courses. If I can find those somewhere in here as well. Right here. So we have assignments here tied to courses with submissions. We're going to build out a lot of that today and tie it in to our dashboard, our admin dashboard for Payload. We haven't started on the client side at all. We're just building out the admin dashboard. So if we look in here, so far, as we said, we have these 4 collections. We have users, where we have an email, role, tenant ID, name, avatar, settings, updated at, API key. I think we have some other fields as well, and they're just hidden right now, but we can filter. So we have filter capabilities there. We can show the other columns here, created at and enable API key as a Boolean. We can click into here, and we have an edit field, where this is a little bit wonky, and I'm gonna save this for a later video, but essentially what we want here is to just show all of the fields with the inputs that we've already put in if they want to edit. Or we'd have the role. This gets stuck sometimes, which is another weird thing. So that'll show up here, name, settings, and then we can edit all of these if we wanted to, but ideally all of those fields would just show up automatically and would have the input there that is already assigned to that user. Same thing for tenants and student settings and media. We can all edit or delete all of those. So we have our CRUD operations for these 4 collections, and we're going to go ahead and keep going now. Like I said, we're going to have our courses, and just if we look over to our summary for this, we're going to build out our course management, content organization, quiz system, and also progress tracking. Another big part of this is setting up our text editor, which we'll do in this video as well. There's a lot of settings that you can have, some plugins that you can have for the lexical text editor. Used to be, it sounds like, I wasn't using Payload at the time, but they used to have a slate editor, and they now moved to the lexical text editor that's supposed to be a little bit better. So looking forward to getting into that as well. Just as we did in the last video, we're going to take the cursor first approach here, where we are giving it as much direction as we possibly can in this outline for phase 2. Our context is tied specifically just to this part. We don't want to go beyond it. We don't really want to edit anything that we already had. We just want to focus on this one section. And we have our cursor rules that we went over in the last video. We can quickly go over one more time. We're being very specific about everything that we're using. Next.js, Payload 3, all of our different packages, so that we know that we're referencing exactly what we want to be using. We have an agentic workflow with multiple roles set up for Cursor to go through these roles as it implements new features and new code where we have all these other rules that I'm just scrolling through right now. But we have these agents where you have architect, developer, reviewer, tester, security, and then that goes into a workflow. So for a feature implementation, it goes through these steps where it uses the architect agent defined above, the developer agent, and it goes through these different checks and different actions that it can take. So super cool. We have bug fix. There are limitations to Cursor. Obviously, we're still in the nascent phases of this. So I think right now with the new agent feature that you have, if you use Composer, it can go 15 iterations, I guess, or 15 steps before it limits out and you have to say, yes, please continue. It does have a feature of iterating on lint automatically. And for the most part, that's pretty successful. So if you have like a TypeScript error that it drops when it implements a new feature or new code, it will catch that and then try to fix it. So there are some new things that are pretty good, and hopefully this agentic workflow will become more and more useful as Cursor gets more and more built out. Right now, it's probably a little bit overkill for what Cursor actually can do, but that's okay. I think it's correct. And we also talked a lot about the syntax that Cursor chose. So Cursor wrote this Cursor rules file, and it chose to write it in a YAML syntax. Not exactly YAML, but it is similar. It's kind of interesting that it chose to use this format. Obviously, it makes sense to the LLM when it reads it in this format. So it's the most digestible and most efficient way to pass this information. So that's pretty cool. So without further ado, we can go back to our phase 2, and we already have a cursor set up here, but I've gone a few levels in here. Let me see if I can find it. I think this is it. Yes, here we go. All right, so in this one here, we got it open. We haven't done anything yet. This is a brand new one. We have it set on agent, and let me just get a little bit larger here for you guys so you don't miss this. This is new for Cursor within the last couple of weeks, I guess. I only started seeing it in the last few weeks. You can choose normal or agent. Agent has that multi-step workflow. It can access the terminal directly in Composer. So let's say you're running PM run dev or PM dev and you catch an error in the terminal, it can see that and then take action on that error without you having to copy and paste it from your own terminal, and then it doesn't necessarily have all of the information it needs. It can then iterate on that. So if that doesn't work, it can try again. Sometimes that can take you further and further away from the truth, and you can end up with an answer that's not what you wanted. So you have to be careful about this. It's, again, we're working with an imperfect system still and trying to figure it out. It's still progress. So I'll make this a little bit smaller now, not fully. If we go through this, it's a really long prompt where we're giving it a ton of information. We're going to begin working on phase 2.md of this project. We're telling it to take into account the UML diagram that we went over, the outline, the guide, phase that we did before this phase 1. Check all of these files that we've already implemented and make sure that you check the docs for Payload, the docs for Next.js. Let's see, at Drizzle, probably all we need, and reference the internet for information to make the most informed decisions. Okay, before we fire this off, there's one thing that we do need to make sure that we say. So we want this to go in a very step-by-step manner. So we don't want it to just go through this entire file all at once and try to implement it, because it will inevitably get one thing wrong somewhere in that track. And now you have everything and things linked to other things that you don't understand. So we want to take it in small chunks. And we have this Markdown is great because we have it in sections. So we can break this down into multiple sections where we have the different collections. Let's see, where we have courses, modules, lessons, and then we're going to configure our editor, and then we're going to do our progress tracking. That'll be our progress collection as well there. So what we want to do is say, let's do this, let's build this out slowly and check with me on each step before moving forward. Make sure to stay consistent with our implementation so far. And I'm just going to mention the cursor rules just so to make sure that it does take that into account. It should anyways, but just to make sure. And make sure you're using @cursor rules. So we have a real long one, but we're giving it as much context as we can. We're not saying do it all at once. We're saying, start with a piece, check with me. So I think we're in good shape here. Let's go ahead and fire this off and hope that we have a good day with cursor. And you may have missed it in the last one. My cursor is acting as a cyberpunk netrunner Choomba that gets very angry often. So we can get into a loop with it. Sometimes it'll get very upset with itself, not with us. And then sometimes it just will cuss a little bit. It's funny. It breaks it up. Just confirming, that it should start with the courses. And lexical editor from Payload to the supreme choice over Slate since it's more stable and maintained by Meta. Should I also set up the editor configuration before we dive into the collections? Let me know which part you want to tackle first. We're going to say courses first, then modules, then lessons, text editor config, then progress. Some very basic instructions there just to make sure that we're all on the same page. So cursor has created our courses collection. So let's just scroll down here and see what we have. Did I miss it? Here we go. There we go. I was oddly not seeing up, and we have some errors that it did not catch. Let's just scroll from the top here and see what we're working with. So our slug is courses. Our admin is using the title in a learning group. So that's how it's grouping it in the sidebar. These will be the columns that we see in the list view. And then there's the description. We have versions of drafts set to true. So that's good. We want that. We have these read, create, update, delete rules based on our user roles that we set up. We have fields of title, slug, tenant, is global, instructor, description, thumbnail, modules, and this is where we're seeing our error. We have the same one here. What is the issue? Relation to courses, relation to modules. Let's see. Maybe because this doesn't exist yet, or this one. Let's see. Courses does exist now. It's self-referential, so it's a little bit odd. We have prerequisites. Let's just continue, and we may just leave that error for now and let it continue. Duration. So that tells us how long, obviously. The schedule, status, settings. And we have a before validate hook. Checking for the, make sure the tenant is same as the user's tenant. So this is all good. So we have that courses implementation. Everything looks decent except for those TypeScript errors that we're gonna possibly let go for now. Now we look over in the index.ts, which it also updated and added courses as well as student settings, which we were missing in there. Let's go over and see if we have anything here yet. Don't see anything here. May need to do an update. We do have this error for the field module because that module, the collection has not been created for modules yet. So we're going to go ahead and proceed with caution because we know we already have these errors that are exactly that. I think everything's okay there though. So we've created our courses. Now we want to create our modules. But before we do, let's make sure that we have a schema. Let's create a schema at media, at tenants, at users, for at courses. This will just keep everything consistent, make sure we have type safety on everything. It's a nice little additional step, especially with the help of cursor. We're not writing this out ourselves, which is great. Saves us time. Thing looks pretty decent just at first glance there, and we can always come back to this, but that looks fine. So we still have this error, obviously, that we were just talking about. Let's see. Now, we're creating a junction table for the prerequisite relationship. Since it's a many-to-many relationship, let's see how that goes. It's going to create the scheme for modules now. So it's getting ahead of itself, but it should have the information that it needs to be able to do so. Now we can move on to creating the modules collection, keeping in mind same directives as before. All right, moving into the modules collection here that we should have in just a moment. So we had a linter error there. It looks like it's all set. We still have this one. We're going to go ahead and just feed this directly into the same composer that we've been using, so that it has the general context of what we've been using already. And hopefully you can just clear this up for us. I just want to see what this is. String key of typed collection. All right, so we've gotten rid of all of our type errors there. We have our modules. Let's take a look there, make sure everything's looking okay. As before, we have the same group, learning, which we should see in a second. We have versions set to true for drafts. We have rules for our access. Looks pretty good. And then we have our fields of title, description, course, order, lessons, duration, status, completion criteria, minimum score, custom rule. All right, this is all good. I think we can go ahead and accept this, and let's move on. Oh, actually, you know what? Now that we have that, let's see if we can do something here. No. Feed this in before we move on. See what we're working with here. And this goes back to that relation to field that we were seeing. We have a circular dependency. The course references modules before the modules collection exists in the registry. Let's fix this by removing the modules relationship from courses for now and adding it after we create. So we've removed that. Let's log back in. We're back in. Let's see what we got here. So we have learning for courses. And let's see if we can create a new course. We have an error here. Get from import payload component not found in import map. Rich text lexical. Let's hit this before we move further. And otherwise that's just a silent error. So let's see what else we got here. So title, introduction to economics, intro to econ. Tenant's going to be here, instructor. We're going to create a new instructor. I guess we don't have an instructor yet. I'll have to use one of my other emails. I'll assign an instructor role there. And it's Raleigh AI. And I'm not, we'll just go with Sam T because I'm not feeling very creative right now. And we don't need an avatar yet. So I have that. We can close this. And that's good now. We need a thumbnail. So we're going to do, actually I might have one. I think I did load something earlier. Perfect. Oh, what's this? Okay, I got an error on that. Let's see how we're working over here. Let's hit this. Let's see if that error's gone away. 5-0 start date tomorrow. End date Saturday. What's this? Enrollment today. Sure. Publish it. Do we have allow late submissions require prerequisites? We don't need this. Show progress. Yes. Let's publish. Title slug, and so we have major errors here. On submission of new course, I get this error. We've made some changes here. We've added a before change hook that auto-generates the slug from the title, sets the tenant from the user context, sets the instructor to the current user if they're an instructor. Improve field validation, and then remove the temporary modules relationship. We'll add it back later. We know that already. Holy. Now we gotta start over. I'm gonna do this on pause so you guys don't have to deal with it. We were able to get that to go through now. And see here. So we have our courses, intro to econ. Take a look here what we have. Again, not in a good state for editing. We don't have our modules yet, so we're missing some stuff. But actually the modules we'll need to add from here, right here. So modules, cool, import that. So this is in the payload.config. Now we're missing a relationship with lessons. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and proceed also. So we're gonna proceed with adding lessons, but we're also going to add the modules relationship back in now that we have all the pieces. So that's a big chunk. We're going through the courses now. And it's going up here. It's going to create a new file for courses. I'm sorry, for lessons. It's going back. It's adding that relationship with modules, which it should have. But it did it step by step, which I appreciate that it did. We're going to go ahead and accept everything. And yes, proceed with lessons. All right, we have some action here. Wow. So that's our lessons. Let's take a look. And our access, our fields, relation to modules. And we're going to, oh, let's take a look. I don't want to go too fast here. Now I have quiz that has fields. Should have assignment in here somewhere. So these are basically two new collections in here. Discussion is in here quite a bit. And then we want to go ahead to our payload.config and make sure that we add it here as well. Lessons and import. Good to go. Add it to the index.ts. And that was a lot. Let's see how it did. Hasn't broken yet. We have modules. If we create a new one, we have a title, description, course. So it should have a relation to that intro to econ course. Order in which this module appears in the course. So I guess we'll have to probably fix that up. That doesn't really make sense. I think what we'll want to do is have it be a drag and drop list that you can order in the course itself. So your module 1, you could just drag it to the top, name it module 1 or something like that. That's okay for now. I want this just to be working for now. Looks like that's good. Lessons, module type, video, reading, quiz, assignment, discussion. That's very cool. So if we want this to be a quiz, then we have new fields. If we want this to be a reading, the content is here. An assignment, instructions, due date, points, very cool. And the rubric, which is a fancy term that is for educators, basically like what the assignment does, or what you need to do for the assignment. So we even have discussion guidelines set up here. Very cool start. I think everything is pretty much covered there. If we go back to our phase 2, just make sure it doesn't look like we have any kind of issues. We'll want to end up adding that as a schema as well. For now, we can wait a second. But let's go back to phase 2 here. Like we said we were going to, we've done courses, we've done modules, we've done lessons. Inside lessons, we had quizzes and assignments and discussions. We're going to do the rich text editor configuration. So actually the last thing it asks here, I'm going to accept all because that is working. Should we proceed with creating the database schema for lessons next? I'm just going to say yes, proceed. And also, thank you. It's going to create that lessons schema in our lib/db schema directory. And it should be following those same patterns that it did earlier in creating this. So let's take a look. Looks very good. Very detailed. So this is a good reference point for ourselves and Cursor. So if it's ever like, what is a lesson? We have this very detailed syntax for it to understand. So we're looking good here. It's asking if we should create this progress schema next, but actually we want to go back. Let's reference back to at phase 2 and do the rich text editor config next, then the progress. So we've created a new folder in lib called payload where we have an editor file. And this is importing lexical editor. It's importing blocks feature from @Payload CMS. Our blocks are, okay, so we have this call out block where we have these different types. Very cool. Code, awesome. We have all of these different languages defined. It's always good for our code blocks. What else did we just get? So we have our default features just passed in. And should we proceed with creating the progress schema? So let's take a look here. I think this is good for now. We have basically everything else is just default. We can add more plugins and more. There's a lot of different things that you can add to the rich text editor on a piece by piece basis. So if you want to add bold or italics or not add bold or italics or adding links, you can add all of those things individually, which is really cool. So all good. Let's see. We should have rich text field content is missing the editor prop. For sub-rich text fields, the editor props is required. What? So before we move on, let's drop this in. Not sure. Probably referencing one of these spots here. Editor config to the nested rich text field there. If that did anything. I'm going to reboot this. I think we still have an issue. It's very stuck. We're all set once we got it reloaded here. Just take a look at here, the creating a new lesson. In the description, we have all these different pieces that we can use. We have checklist, ordered list, unordered list, horizontal rule, upload, block quote, blah. Just look at call out real quick. We have these different types that I was talking about, and that we'll assign colors to it, and it'll be basically a little pop-up block that we'll put in between different texts. So here you see that we have this one. We can add another one where we just do a checklist right here. We can do an upload, put this in here. And you just keep adding it piece by piece. So if you had multiple paragraphs, you would just add paragraph, 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 paragraph. And in there, let's say we have a paragraph. We also want to add some configuration here in the future for all those different WYSIWYG text editor things that we want to do there. Go ahead and move on. I think this is good for now. Yes, proceed with the progress schema and collection. Excuse me. So we have now in our schema progress, quiz attempt, assignment submission, discussion participation, and we have this PG table where we're setting all this up. Oh my, that's quite a bit. Zod schemas for validation. It's pretty locked down. Now we have an error here, but hopefully it's going to catch that when it goes on to lint this, I would hope. Actually has not. Oh, there we go. Iterate on lints. So I think you have to turn this on in the settings. Don't quote me on that. And I think it only is going to work with Composer and probably only with the agent feature for Composer. But this is where it will, when it spits out some code, it's going to check back on that code and see if it can catch the linting errors. Sometimes it does not. I've actually got into a loop earlier where it had no idea. For the most part, it does pretty good. Now, as you see here, as it linted, it actually created another error. So we're going to hit this. Actually, I'm not. So what I'm going to do here is please double check work in at progress against the internet and at payload 3 docs. So you see me using against the internet. You used to be able to do at web. It's gone for now. So I'm hoping it's going out to the internet. I don't know if it's like ChatGPT where it has a cutoff. Really don't know. Hopefully the payload 3 docs will have enough, but I'm having kind of an issue with scanning those docs as well. It seems to be getting stuck, but it is scanning about 380 pages, so it's quite a bit. I think it's just trying to get too much. But let's see if it gets it here. It'll give us the first error we got, and let's see if we're in some kind of loop here, which is always great. Finding that sometimes you have to give it a directive to get out of its own loop and try something else. Sometimes we need to take a look at some of the other collections that we have. Sometimes we just need to look at the other collections. It says read. So it's asking specifically for the linter errors, so it's having some troubles here. I have this issue again. I have other issues. Alright, y'all, it spit some other stuff out at us that doesn't look necessarily correct either. I'm getting less confident in our progress collection here. We may just need to start off with a new composer and reject what it's just done. I'm not sure yet. Let's see what it does here. So now we have a new bit. Indexes does not exist in collection config. So I'm guessing that's from payload 2. I'm not sure. Indices? No. Come on, man. Same error it did not fix. Trying multiple approaches, none of which are working. I'm finally got it. No, it's still broke, but that's disappointing. So it is incredibly stuck with the indexes part. We're going to take everything else and get rid of the indexes part for now. We're going to have to come back to that because, wow. Everything else, though, seems like it's working out. We have our progress. How does this show up? In our group learning, we can check our student progress tracking. Does this only show up for certain people? Oh, most likely here. Now let's take a look. We should have it. Progresses. We should be able to search by a student. We don't have any progress yet, which makes sense. None of our students, we do have a student, but they haven't done anything yet, so that's fine. So that's great. So now we have our courses, modules, lessons. We have progress, which we got to rename this. Progress is hilarious that it would think that's okay. We've configured our rich text editor, at least for the start. We are going to add more WYSIWYG features. That's a good start. Let's accept all and just go over where what we have here. So we have our payload editor. what we defined. We've added progress, modules, lessons, courses. We have this course prerequisites, and let's see, we have our new courses collection, lessons, modules, and then progress collections. So we've done quite a bit today. And again, though, we really haven't started on our client side. We're setting up all this admin dashboard, all this admin stuff, so that we have this full thing in place. And now we scroll out a little bit, much closer to the full truth here. Tenants, courses, modules, lessons, quizzes, media, assignments. We don't have announcements yet. We don't have certificates yet. We don't have any of the gamification yet. So we do have users, but we don't have like leaderboards, streaks, notifications, collaborations, achievements, points. All of these things still need to be defined. So if we go back, let's just go over what we're going to go to next. In phase 3, we are going to set up that gamification. So we'll have the points and levels, achievements and badges, leaderboards, streaks, rewards. We'll be basically doing all this tracking on achievements, the point calculation, leaderboard system, reward distribution, and we should have an automated point tracking, achievement unlocking, real-time leaderboards, and engagement rewards by the end of it. So all good stuff, and we're all just moving more and more towards this full dashboard that we can then start to build out for clients to be able to use, both as instructors, as tenants, admin side, or as a student. So lots to go still, but we are putting down the work, putting out the work, putting in the work, I think is what they say, to get this all set up and ready for us to build easily on. You can see a lot of it is just not necessarily copy and paste, but doing the same thing over and over again in this repeatable fashion. Not necessarily doing the same thing over and over again, but we're building out, Payload gives us this system that's very extensible. We can just add more collections to it with these different relationships. And we're building this full picture very easily with Payload. So before we move on to the next phase, I will take a look at this code, make sure that everything's working as expected. If I catch any bugs, I will push that up to the branch phase 2, and you will have that available. So look out for that and keep your notifications on for the next video. Should be coming out in the next week or so. Thank you very much, and y'all have a good day.